President Donald Trump is not done taking away people's security clearances.
The new targets, which are 8 in total, include former Secretary of State Tony Blinken, Letitia James and Alvin Bragg.
Trump told the New York Post, who first reported the story, that he thought Blinken was a bad guy. Recall that Blinken helped put together the Dirty 51 letter about Hunter Biden's laptop appearing to be Russian disinformation. Trump told the Post that Blinken will get the same punishment as the Dirty 51. Trump's administration argues the moves are to hold government officials accountable for what they describe as election interference or at least mishandling of classified documents.
Former President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Biden's Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco were also on the list. And there's also Trump critic Andrew Weissman. Weissman was the lead prosecutor in the 2016 Russian election interference probe.
Now, earlier, Trump had also revoked former President Joe Biden's security clearance. He wrote in part on Truth Social last week, "There's no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving access to classified information. Therefore, we are immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearances and stopping his daily intelligence briefings." He set this precedent in 2021 when he instructed the intelligence community to stop the 45th president of the United States, me, from accessing details on national security, a courtesy provided to former presidents. Joe, you're fired. Make America great again.
Trump also revoked lawyer Mark Zaid's security clearance. Zaid formerly represented CIA analyst Eric Ciaramella. Ciaramella was a whistleblower in Trump's first impeachment, which surrounded a phone call Trump had with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zaid took to Blue Sky and wrote, "I'm honored by President Trump bestowing upon me a red badge of courage. But if he and his partisan minions think this will deter me from holding them accountable to the rule of law, they are sadly mistaken," end quote. A lawyer who works with Zaid, Bradley Moss, wrote, quote, "Fotis revoked my boss's clearance because Fotis is a pathetic little man. Blah, 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 I'll be next, no doubt."
Meanwhile, journalist Adam Housley wrote on X, Jake Sullivan should have lost his security clearance 13 years ago when he lied to Americans about the attack in Benghazi. Sometimes karma takes time. The real question here is, why did Letitia James and Alvin Bragg have security clearances to begin with? And that is also a question I was wondering, and I guess I could have tried to Google it while you were reading. I don't know why they would.
Well, in Bragg's case, maybe as a prosecutor, there's some relevance to what he needs to look at behind the scenes. I think there's two separate ways of looking at this, Robby.
Yeah.
And it's often the case that this kind of dichotomy applies with Trump. One is, I do think, and I do accept that there is an abstract argument about whether even former presidents should have security clearances. Do they need them? Is it salient in some way? And obviously the same goes for the Jake Sullivans in the world and his equivalent on the Republican side. So you can have that abstract argument. That's a separate thing from Trump, as I would see it, simply pursuing things for the sake of vindictiveness, trying to get Biden back, for example, trying to attack Tony Blinken because of the Russian disinformation story, etc. The general...
Some of that vindictiveness is a little deserved, though.
Well, I mean, you could argue that perhaps in the Russian laptop case, but I think it's harder to argue it when it's just him taking these swipes at people like Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, who he has consistently just been aggressive or personally vindictive towards.
But it's on some level it feels like, does everyone have national security clearance except like you and I and the American people?
Well,
like every government official gets this?
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, I think that's a legitimate argument to have. I'm not quite clear why security clearances are as widespread as they are. I wonder, is part of its application to do with a particular favorite topic of yours, which is what you see as the over-classification of information?
Certainly.
And therefore, to see kind of quite basic stuff, you need security clearances. I'm hypothesizing, but maybe that's part of the picture.
Because look, there's stuff that does need to remain truly secret, like the names and locations of American spies that I certainly hope is not just being, and it is not, is my understanding. There's various levels of security clearance. That should not be handed out like candy to anyone, to people who work in like Alvin Bragg or something. That would be crazy. That's not the information they're giving him. But short of that, I want more information declassified for all of us. There shouldn't be this permanent class of people who served in government years and years and years ago who still has access to this kind of thing, particularly in the case of the Hunter Biden laptop letter people who are then using that increased reputational legitimacy of that kind of access to say, we're the experts here, we're really good at telling this stuff, this is what this looks like to us, and was misused. And also, and I didn't remember or recall that Joe Biden had stripped Donald Trump of access to this, but given that he did that, it seems the turnabout's fair play. I don't know how one could oppose Trump doing it if Biden did it to Trump.
There's some controversy over the specifics of that, or at least some lack of clarity about it. There was reporting at the time that Biden had said that Trump couldn't receive the daily intelligence briefing, which I guess is provided as a courtesy to former presidents. It's less clear that Biden actually revoked Trump's security clearance full stop. And it was also my impression that once Trump became the Republican nominee this time around, he was in fact getting those intelligence briefings because the nominee of a major party is entitled to them. So all of that, I think, is a little bit unclear. Look, I take your point about career officials and people who use the fact that they have security clearance to, in essence, boost their own value in the marketplace and get bigger paychecks. That seems dodgy to me.
Lobby more effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that is I think, separate issue from Trump's propensity, whether it's security clearances, security detail, or other accoutrements of power that he uses just to slap his enemy.
Well, the security detail is a slightly different issue, one of resources, because providing security for people is very expensive, and I don't know that we should endlessly provide security to...
Yeah, but this is what I mean. Yes, fair point, there is a finite number of resources, but do we really...
We're not even providing enough security for the president.
But do we think that Trump took it away from John Bolton, for example, because of resources, or is it because he doesn't like John Bolton?
No, I mean, he took it away because he doesn't like John Bolton.
Right.
But should John Bolton have a security detail forever? I don't...
I mean, I don't like what John Bolton stands for, but we went through it.
I don't think you like what Tony Blinken stands for either. You're probably... Trump's going, bad guy, take away his passes. You're celebrating that.
No, but I mean, in the case of Bolton, whose views I don't agree with at all, he does and has faced significant threats to his life from the Iranians, and those threats stem from actions he took in office.
The Iranians also dealt with a lot of threat from John Bolton, the threat to start World War III with them.
For sure, but I do think that there's a moral obligation on the government of the United States to protect people whose lives are in danger because of actions.
Because of their advocacy for war with that nation.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Bolton has advocated war with that nation forever. It's the fact that he was seemingly involved, I think, during the time that Qasem Soleimani was assassinated that got the Iranians.
Well, and Trump has been very clear that he will stomach no assassinations or taking out of top government officials, and was very clear on that. Look, I think there's maybe more research is necessary to determine what exactly these kind of security clearances entitles you to in terms of intelligence. I mostly just want the American people to have access to more of this information if they hand it out to most people who pass through the government service at one point.
Fair enough.
Coming up on Rising, we'll have an interview with journalist Derek Robinson, where he'll discuss the vulnerability of our government technological systems. Stay tuned.